would you respond if you were diagnosed with a fatal disease? Well, naturally speaking, I think a lot of us would feel despair and sink into depression. Or would it be possible to rise up in faith and fight to overcome? Well, today's guest is only 20 years of age. Elijah Stacy was diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. It's a fatal muscle wasting disease. He's also written a book called A Small If. Welcome to Bridge City News, Elijah. We're so happy to have you on today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here with you.
Absolutely. Now, Elijah, can you first of all tell us what Duchenne's disease is? When were you diagnosed? How old were you, and how has it affected you?
Yeah, so Duchenne muscular dystrophy, it's a muscle wasting disease that eats away a person's muscles as time goes on. So we started noticing signs when I was about 5 years old. I wouldn't be able to keep up with my peers on the playground. I walked on my tippy toes. Going upstairs was a challenge. These things that were very abnormal for my age. So then I was officially diagnosed with the disease when I was 6 years old. Then as time went on, I became completely dependent on a wheelchair when I was 11 years old because I became too weak to bear any weight on my legs. And then later in your teenage years, you start to lose mobility in your arms. So you can't lift your arms above your head or anything like that. It's very challenging there. And the worst part about the disease is it's a fatal disease, as you said. And that's because it attacks the heart and diaphragm because those are muscles too. And Duchenne is a muscle wasting disease.
My gosh, that is absolutely devastating. And this has hit your family hard as well, obviously. So, two of your brothers were also diagnosed with Duchenne's disease. Can you tell us about this?
Yeah, that's correct. So my youngest brother, Kai, he's 14 years old. He's in eighth grade. He also has Duchenne, and he's in a power wheelchair as well. And then my other brother, Max, he's 14, but he passed away. So he's in heaven now. But he had Duchenne as well. But he also had other health complications. When he was born, he had a massive stroke that led to him being cognitively delayed, blind, unable to speak, needing a feeding tube, and confined to a bed with a full time nurse and my mom taking care of him when basically full time as well. So that was my brother Max.
Oh my gosh, that is so sad. I'm so sorry to hear that. Is this disease hereditary?
So the way it works is that it will be like my mom doesn't have the disease, so it is genetic, but it's not hereditary, and so it's X linked. So the mother will pass it down. It's on the X chromosome, and so it comes from her because during reproduction, the mother will have two X chromosomes to put up, and my older brother, he's actually completely healthy and fine. He got the good one, and then the rest of us, we got the bad one. So, but there's a reason I believe why we have the disease that we have.
Yeah, and you're so positive, Elijah. You're quite the go-getter, too. And I understand that you started up a nonprofit organization at the age of 15 called Destroy Duchenne. How's that going? What are your goals with this?
Yeah, so Destroy Duchenne, I started when I was 15, and it's a nonprofit that aims at advancing a medical science to cure this disease. So we're trying to raise tons of money to help science and to help minimize the suffering that people face, and that's really our main focus. And so, very very passionate about that. Very passionate about business and all those good things. So I have a lot of fun doing that because my overall life cause is to minimize human suffering and propel human prosperity so that humanity can have a better quality of life. So there's all different ways I'm trying to do that, and the nonprofit is one of those.
Wow. And now, at the age of 16, you chose physical therapy over surgery. So, why did you make that decision?
Yeah, so I went to my doctor and my spine was starting to curve more and more, and we needed to. He started to advocate that you need to have a metal rod inserted into your back, and I didn't want a metal rod inserted into my back, and so that was just terrible news. So I'm going back and forth with my doctor. I look over to my left, my mom's crying, my dad has his head down. That's what he does when he's sitting there smiling because I'm not accepting this news. I do not want a metal around my back, and I'm saying I'm not going to have the surgery. So I asked him, "Hey, can I just not have the surgery?" He said, "You could, but as your doctor, I got to really point to you having the surgery. I got to put my foot down. You got to have the surgery." So the time goes on again, and then I asked him again. I said, "So if I was able to reverse the current state of my spine, could I then avoid having to get the surgery?" And he said, "Well, I don't want to give you any false hope. I've never seen this being done before. It's basically medically impossible. But because I know you, I will give you a small if." And so from that day forward, I went to physical therapy, did intense stretching and all kinds of things like that. Worked out all day. Um, I hung a picture up of my X-ray so I can get in the right mindset every day. I even taught myself how to cook in a wheelchair, so I'm driving the wheelchair with one hand, holding a pan in the other hand, going to the stove. Right, I'm doing all of that, and 3 months later, I go to the doctors, and my spine is straighter. I don't have to get the surgery. All it took was a small lift. It took that possibility, that small chance, and I worked with it and made it happen.
Oh, wow. And of course, A Small If is the title of the book that you wrote.
Yep. Yep. And really, my whole life, as I wrote the book, I could see a small if, throughout my whole life, these things that I'm not supposed to do with small possibilities and then go and make it happen.
Oh, gosh, that is absolutely amazing. Now, in your book, you write about something that you call an adapter's mindset. So, can you maybe explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So the adapter's mindset, it's one of the lessons in my book. There's a lesson at the end of the first 13 chapters, but this lesson, the adapter's mindset, is all about being in the mindset that no matter what comes your way, you're going to adapt to it. Right. And so being in a wheelchair, I had to adapt to get in and out of my bed by myself, went to the bathroom by myself, getting in the shower by myself, right? You have to adapt to it because it's going to be a lot harder than just to stand up and do it, right? And sometimes the way you have to adapt though was swallowing your pride and asking for help. That's a key way to adapt. But the whole mindset, the adapter's mindset is to be open to being creative and to being open to however I got to make this happen, I got to make it happen. That's the adapter's mindset. It's just a take no for an answer and just find a way to make it happen.
Gosh, that is amazing. What a strong individual you are, seriously. So, what's the difference between controlling something and influencing it? And which one is better in your opinion?
Well, yeah. So I don't think there's necessarily a better one. I just think the benefit of this is to recognize the difference because it frees you from stress and emotional bondage to things. So controlling something is to be able to determine the actual outcome of it, right? You can absolutely control the outcome of it. Where influencing something is you can affect something, but you can't necessarily control the outcome. And what I would say is that you got to focus on what you can control and disregard what you cannot. And a majority of things are not in your control. And so when you realize that, it really frees you from a lot of the stress and stuff. So, for example, the example I like to give people is, let's say I want to make somebody like me. So I'll be very nice to them, polite, take an interest in them. But at the end of the day, that's not in my control. They may not like anybody, so they may just, not like me as well, right? And that's not in my control. But all I can do is try and influence them to like me and be a good person, be nice to them, right? And so that's the difference between the two. And I think when you really realize that, it really helps you in your life, having this disease and the challenges that come with it, knowing what I can influence and knowing what I can control is very important to keep myself in a healthy state of mind.
Yeah, totally. Now, in your book, you talk about using negative energy as a motivation, which I think is really cool because you've experienced some bullying and you've also experienced people not believing that you'd be able to, heal yourself or get the spine, I guess, straight. Or maybe talk a little bit about that using that negative energy as motivation. How does that work?
Yeah, so I call it rocket fuel. I call it rocket fuel in my book. And basically, it's when somebody doubts you, right? They believe that you can't do this or that. That's free motivation to go prove to yourself that no, I'm right about myself. You say I can't do this. I believe I can do it. I'm going to prove myself to be right and I'm going to prove you to be wrong. And that's what that's all about. So it's free motivation. And the way I like to think about it, it's like, it's a classic example of like using evil for good. We read it in the Bible that God is constantly taking evil and then using it and turning it into good for his purposes. And so it's that similar thing. And that's really what I've been trying to do my whole life. I turned my wheelchair into my advantage. I turned this power chair into a power chair, right? That's what I like to say. And so, you have to use you got to turn your disadvantages into your advantages. And so people being, putting their insecurities on you and doubting you and trying to tear you down, that's just free motivation. That's using negative energy for a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I mean, you brought up your faith. So, as a person of faith, how do you reconcile your suffering or your disease with your beliefs?
Well, so like I said, I believe that God gave me this disease for a reason. I think that there's a reason that he wants me to have this disease. And what I realize is that, being in a wheelchair, it draws more attention to myself. Let's keep it honest. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. If I'm living my life as Christ and I'm being a Christ-like example to people, and I can go and tell people about them, they're going to remember me more than if I didn't have the wheelchair. The wheelchair is just more memorable. It's different. And so it's a really powerful message there. But not just that, the credibility behind it. The Bible deals a lot with suffering. Jesus spent a lot of time healing people that had, some type of illness or whatever. But not just that, but people with suffering. He consulted with them. And I think that, having the suffering that I have, it makes me very credible to say that the Bible is the solution to people's problems. It will lead to the fulfillment and joy that you are seeking. The things of the world will not do that. You seek after money, you seek after fame, you seek after these things of the world, but you still feel empty. You're still searching. But when you have God, He fills that emptiness inside of you. It's a supernatural thing. That's what I believe, at least. And I just think that the wheelchair and the suffering that I go through it allows me to communicate that effectively to people that may not know it.
That's amazing. Now, in your book, you have many lessons, and one of them that you teach about is self-image, and I'm sure that you've gone through that yourself. So why is self-image so key, and how can a person build up their own self-image?
Yeah, so the self-image is, how do you view yourself, right? And how you view yourself is going to relate to how you act. And how you act is how other people are going to see you. So it's very important that, okay, well, how do you see yourself? So if you see yourself as timid and shy and maybe not so confident, you're probably going to act that way. But if you see yourself as a confident individual, you're probably going to act confident. And thus people are going to think you're confident. And that's going to be just a loop of positivity and reinforcing that self-image. So if somebody wants to change their self-image, they have to think about it. Well, what image do you want? What do you want to be? You want to be a confident person. Well, think about times in your past as proof of when you were confident. Maybe you raised your hand in class and nobody else did. That may be small, but that's all you need to get going. So then you say, okay, no, I do have some confidence in me. And then you can visualize and really think about it mentally and just kind of go through it. Visualize yourself thinking about being confident and imagine yourself in a certain situation. Maybe you're talking on stage, or maybe you're going to go approach somebody that you normally wouldn't approach, right? That right there is how you're going to build that self-image. And then as you practice it, you're going to become more and more aligned with that new self-image that you want.
That's amazing. So many good nuggets in this book, but you also write about the need to be self-sacrificing. So what's that all about?
Yeah, so that lesson highly influenced by my faith, right? That just to start off, the Son of God came down to sacrifice His life for us so that we could be saved, right? So that right there tells you something, that sacrifice is important. But I think that the world today is too selfish. I think people are way too selfish within their friendships, romantic relationships, and just the way that we deal with people within our communities. I think that we need to self-sacrifice from time to time, and I think that would make things a lot better. If I, for example, have a friend and they want to go to a movie and I want to go to a basketball game, I can sacrifice going to this basketball game so we go to the movie because I know that they will enjoy it. And I think that that kind of sacrifice will lead to just a much better world. And I think that we need to stop focusing so much on ourselves and focus on other people.
Hmm. I think people need to hire you as a motivational speaker, because you're definitely energizing me for sure. You are an amazing young man, and thank you so much for sharing your amazing story with us, Elijah. We're so happy that you could come on with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been great talking to you.
Elijah Stacy is the author of A Small If. If you would like to find out more about Stacy's organization and get a copy of the book, just go to destroyduchenne.org. It's right there on the screen. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.